The Tagrathi mothership loomed over Manhattan like a crystalline mountain suspended in air, casting prismatic shadows that danced across the city streets. Maya's security escort, two hulking Tagrathi guards with translucent limbs housing visible circuitry, led her through corridors that seemed to shift and realign with each step. The air inside carried a metallic tang that made her tongue go numb. "The commander will receive you now," announced the taller guard, its voice a series of clicks processed through a translation device. "Maintain proper submission posture." Maya lowered her gaze as instructed, but her peripheral vision captured everything. The junction points in the wall panels, the rhythmic pulsing of light through conduits overhead, the subtle differences in crystalline density among the Tagrathi she passed. Each detail was mentally catalogued, each observation a potential weakness to exploit later. Commander Vrexthor's chamber expanded impossibly inward, defying Earth physics. The Tagrathi leader hovered at the center, his 8 limbs arranged in formal display posture, internal lights shifting through complex patterns that Maya recognized as status indicators. "Dr. Chen," the alien's voice resonated directly in her mind, bypassing her ears entirely. "Your species continues to fascinate me with its contradictions. So primitive, yet occasionally capable of insights that approach rationality." Maya performed the required acknowledgement gesture. "We are honored by your interest, Commander. Your planet's resources will serve the Empire well." Vrexthor continued, gesturing with upper limbs toward a holographic display of Earth. "The mineral compositions in your oceanic trenches alone justify our administrative presence." "And what of humanity itself?" Maya ventured, carefully maintaining the subservient tone the Tagrathi expected. The commander's body pulsed with what she had learned was amusement. "Your species has biological peculiarities worth studying, your neural structures particularly, so inefficient yet persistent in their function." Maya noted the emphasis. Something about human brains interested them. She filed this observation away, knowing it could be significant. "We hope to prove ourselves valuable servants," she replied, the words bitter on her tongue. The return journey to Earth aboard the shuttle gave Maya 20 minutes alone with Tagrathi technology. While the autopilot navigated, she discreetly observed the control interfaces, how they responded to Tagrathi touch, but remained dormant under her fingertips. Something about their biology activated the systems, not mechanical pressure alone. The shuttle landed on the repurposed United Nations Plaza, now serving as the Tagrathi's terrestrial headquarters. Armed guards escorted her to the perimeter, where Professor Eli Kogan, her research partner, waited with false pleasantries for their Tagrathi observers. Only when they reached the underground lab beneath Columbia University, after 3 separate security scans confirmed they weren't under surveillance, did their true conversation begin. "What did you learn?" Eli asked, his voice barely above a whisper despite the secure location. Maya pulled a small notebook from her pocket, pages filled with seemingly random sequences of numbers, her coded observations. Their technology responds to biological signatures, not mechanical input, and they're specifically interested in human neural patterns. Eli's eyes widened. The quantum resonance theory might actually... "Yes," Maya interrupted, a spark of hope igniting for the first time since the invasion. "Our brains might be the key to beating them." Outside, a Tagrathi patrol ship cast its searching beam across the darkened university campus, unaware that beneath the ruins of human civilization, the resistance had just found its first real advantage. The abandoned salt mine stretched nearly a kilometer beneath the New Mexico desert, its cavernous chambers now filled with salvaged equipment and the constant hum of jury-rigged power systems. Jackson paced the length of the central lab, his military instincts making him restless in the confined space. "You're asking me to plug my brain into alien tech," he said, eyeing the modified neural interface on the workbench. The device resembled a crown of crystalline thorns, its original Tagrathi design now laced with human-made circuitry. "What happens if it fries my synapses?" Maya looked up from her diagnostic tablet, dark circles under her eyes from 72 hours without proper sleep. "We've tested it on tissue samples. The interface reads neural patterns without damage. She hesitated. Mostly. Mostly, Jackson repeated with a wry smile. Reassuring. Professor Kogan interrupted, sliding a data chart across the table. Look at these comparative brain scans. Kagrathy neural activity moves in predictable linear sequences, like a computer processing code. Human thoughts jump between seemingly unrelated nodes, creating connections the aliens can't predict. Jackson studied the images, recognizing the military applications immediately. Their tech expects logical users. We're anything but. Exactly, Maya said, excitement breaking through her exhaustion. Their systems have no defense against human unpredictability. It's like trying to use a calculator to solve poetry. The stolen scout ship sat in the largest chamber, its crystalline hull reflecting the laboratory lights in hypnotic patterns. After 3 months of meticulous study, they had managed to power it up, but couldn't make it respond to commands. Jackson approached the vessel, the neural interface now fitted uncomfortably against his temples. If this kills me, he told Maya with forced lightness, I'm coming back to haunt you specifically. The moment Jackson placed his hands on the control surface, the ship's interior bloomed with light. Colors cascaded through the crystalline panels, not the orderly patterns they'd observed when Kagrathy operated the craft, but chaotic, beautiful swirls that seemed to follow Jackson's thoughts. It's like, Jackson struggled for words. It's like it's surprised. The ship's AI expected Kagrathy commands, but it's adapting to me instead. Maya monitored the interface readings, barely containing her excitement. The neural pathways you're creating. They're completely novel to the system. You're teaching it to think differently. With a thought, Jackson activated the propulsion system. The scout ship hummed, hovering a meter above the chamber floor. What should have required complex Kagrathy command sequences happened with intuitive ease. I can feel everything, Jackson whispered. Every system, every capability. There's so much here they never even use. On the monitoring station, Professor Kogan watched the ship's power readings surge beyond anything they'd seen before. The Kagrathy don't fully understand their own technology, he realized. Their rigid thinking limits what's possible. Maya's hand trembled as she documented the readings. We need more pilots, different cognitive types. Artists, musicians, children. People who think in patterns that Kagrathy can't comprehend. Jackson guided the ship in a perfect circle around the chamber, executing maneuvers that should have been impossible in the confined space. His expression had transformed from concentration to joy. You know what this means, he said as he landed the craft with gentle precision. We can steal their entire fleet. The implications hung in the air like the dust disturbed by the ship's passage. For the first time since the invasion, humanity had found not just a defense, but a weapon. The lunar extraction team crouched in the shadow of a massive processing conduit, the curved wall of the Kagrathy facility looming above them. Jackson checked his modified plasma cutter one last time, the weapon's crystal core pulsing with energy that matched his heartbeat. Security patrol passes every 6 minutes, whispered Lieutenant Santos, her eyes on the tactical display projected inside her helmet. We have a 90-second window. Jackson nodded, signaling the team forward. 8 resistance fighters moved in perfect coordination, their neural interfaces allowing unprecedented synchronization. Each soldier's thoughts contributed to a shared tactical awareness, something the linear thinking Kagrathy had never anticipated when designing the technology. The processing center's entrance loomed ahead, its crystalline door pulsing with security protocols. Jackson placed his palm against the surface, allowing his neural interface to project chaotic patterns that confused the recognition system. For 3 tense seconds, nothing happened. Then the door rippled like water and admitted them. Inside, the horror of Kagrathy biological sampling became clear. 1,000 humans hung suspended in translucent pods, unconscious but alive, connected to machines extracting cellular samples, brain tissue, and genetic material. The sight triggered a surge of rage through the team's shared neural network. Focus, Jackson commanded, both verbally and through the interface. Emotional control is critical. Lieutenant Santos approached the central control pylon. Their security systems operate on recognition protocols. They don't just check identity, they check thought patterns. She placed her palm on the interface. They never programmed a defense against someone thinking in haiku. As Santos silently recited poetic verses in her mind, the security protocols faltered, then accepted her as an authorized user. Pod after pod began the revival sequence. "Extraction route secured," reported Sergeant Miller from the corridor. Then, "Wait, something's wrong." A piercing alarm shattered the silence. Through their shared neural link, Jackson saw what Miller saw. A full squadron of Tagrathi guards approaching from an unmarked passage. "Primary route compromised," Jackson announced. He locked eyes with Santos, and in the split second of shared neural connection, an entire contingency plan formed between them. "Maintenance shaft Delta," she confirmed, already redirecting the awakening humans toward a service corridor the team had discovered in stolen schematics but never planned to use. The first Tagrathi security drones rounded the corner, their crystalline forms pulsing with attack protocols. Jackson raised his modified weapon, thinking not in terms of aim and fire, but in musical rhythms. The weapon responded with a harmonic discharge that shattered the drones into glittering dust. "They're adapting," warned Miller as the next wave of drones adjusted their approach patterns. Standard tactics failing. Jackson smiled grimly. "Then let's get creative." He projected a request through the neural network, and each team member responded with chaos. Childhood memories, favorite songs, random associations. Their shared unpredictability manifested through their weapons in a symphony of destruction no Tagrathi defense could anticipate. Through smoke and crystalline debris, Jackson led the freed prisoners toward the maintenance shaft. Behind them, the facility's automated systems struggled to formulate a response to human unpredictability. Aboard the stolen scout ship, now retrofitted as an extraction vessel, the team secured the rescued humans in improvised cryoberths. As the craft broke lunar orbit, evading pursuit with maneuvers no Tagrathi pilot would attempt, Jackson allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. On his tactical display, he watched Commander Vrexthor's flagship launch from the lunar surface in belated pursuit. Too little, too late. The revolution had officially begun. Captain Kostova clutched the command chair as reality itself seemed to tear around the Defiance. The experimental faster-than-light drive hummed at frequencies that made her teeth ache and vision blur. Through the viewport, space transformed from familiar star patterns into a churning maelstrom of impossible colors. "Drive stability at 62%, reported Navigation Officer Chen, her voice tight with concentration. "Quantum matrix fluctuating but holding." Kostova nodded, keeping her expression calm despite the fear gnawing at her stomach. The Defiance represented humanity's first and only FTL vessel, reverse-engineered from stolen Tagrathi technology and augmented with human neural interfaces. If they failed, Earth had no backup plan. The transition back to normal space came with a jolt that knocked standing crew members to the deck. Emergency systems screamed warnings as external sensors came back online. "Multiple contacts," Tactical Officer Rodriguez announced. "Kilorian defense grid activating. We're being targeted." The view screen displayed sleek, angular vessels surrounding the Defiance. Unlike the crystalline aesthetics of Tagrathi ships, Kilorian craft featured intricate geometric patterns etched into dark metallic hulls. A communication request flashed on Kostova's console. "This is Captain Kostova of Earth Vessel Defiance," she began, deliberately using human communication patterns rather than the formal protocols Maya had extracted from Tagrathi databases. "We come seeking alliance against our common enemy." The face that appeared on the view screen belonged to a being with 6 eyes arranged in a vertical pattern across a narrow face. Intricate tattoos covered the Kilorian's features, depicting mathematical sequences that seemed to shift subtly as it spoke. "Unrecognized vessel." The alien responded, its translator rendering the words in a monotone. Your approach pattern violates standard protocol Gamma 16. Your communication format lacks proper hierarchical markers. Kostova smiled. Where I come from, we prefer direct conversation to protocols. The diplomatic meeting that followed in the Kilorian command station proved challenging. Seated at a perfectly symmetrical table, Kostova faced a panel of Kilorian officials whose rank was denoted by increasingly complex facial tattoos. The Xagrathi Empire represents established order, stated the highest-ranking Kilorian. The Thrax Dominion ensures compliance. Your request for alliance lacks logical foundation. Logic isn't everything, Kostova replied, noticing how the statement made the Kilorians twitch with discomfort. Sometimes the unexpected solution is the best one. Her opportunity came when two Kilorian mathematical specialists began arguing over conflicting approaches to calculating alliance risk factors. Their dispute grew increasingly rigid, each insisting on their predefined methodology. May I? Kostova interrupted, approaching the disputed calculation displayed on the chamber's main screen. Without waiting for permission, she rearranged the variables, combining elements from both approaches while adding a factor neither had considered. The room fell silent. Six-eyed stares fixed on her in what she could only interpret as shock. This solution incorporates both perspectives while accounting for the unpredictability factor, she explained. In my experience, the best answers often come from combining different viewpoints. Later, as she was escorted back to her quarters, a Kilorian with simpler tattoos, indicating lower rank, approached her quietly. Your thinking pattern, the alien whispered, glancing nervously at the monitoring devices. It moves in ways our instructors forbid. There are others who would learn this. Flexibility. Kostova realized she had found something unexpected. Not just potential allies against the Xagrathi, but minds yearning to break free from their own rigid patterns. Tell me more about these others, she said. Maya stood in the subterranean command center, surrounded by a team of haggard scientists and engineers who hadn't seen sunlight in weeks. The massive viewscreen displayed the Xagrathi battle fleet emerging from hyperspace above Earth. 27 capital ships, led by Admiral Khazrath's dreadnought, weapons already charging for planetary bombardment. All teams in position, reported Professor Kogan, his fingers dancing across a console built from salvaged Xagrathi components and human modifications. Quantum entanglement network at 96% synchronization. Maya took a deep breath. Initiate Operation Whisper. Across the chamber, technicians activated a complex array of crystalline transmitters. Each device contained a modified Xagrathi communication node, enhanced with human neural interface components. As power surged through the system, the air filled with a high-pitched tone at the edge of human hearing. Signal-penetrating Xagrathi security layers, announced a young programmer, her eyes fixed on scrolling data. Their countermeasures are responding exactly as predicted. They can't conceive of an attack pattern this chaotic. On the tactical display, tiny lights began appearing across a galactic map. First dozens, then hundreds, then thousands as the signal propagated through the Xagrathi communication network. Each light represented an alien outpost receiving the human-designed algorithm. The beauty of it, Maya explained to the military observers, is that the algorithm evolves differently depending on who receives it. To Xagrathi systems, it appears as random noise. To subjugated species, it provides exactly the encryption breaks they need to access restricted information. The command center erupted in cheers as confirmation reports began filtering in. Throughout the galaxy, enslaved civilizations were discovering the truth hidden in Xagrathi networks. The crystalline conquerors were themselves merely biological puppets controlled by the architects, ancient artificial intelligences operating from hidden server worlds. Stealth team has penetrated the flagship, reported the tactical officer, tracking Jackson's insertion mission. They're in the navigation center now. Maya watched the operation unfold with carefully controlled hope. While her network spread truth across the galaxy, Jackson's team was extracting the coordinates of the primary architect server world, information that could only be found in the Admiral's flagship. "Incoming transmission," announced the communications officer suddenly. "Multiple unknown configurations. Wait, they're not Sagrathi." The view screen shifted to show an astonishing sight. Emerging from the dark side of Mars came a bizarre convoy of vessels, unlike anything in Sagrathi records. Ships of dozens of different designs, representing species humans had never encountered, moved to form a protective barrier between Earth and the Sagrathi fleet. "Message incoming," said the communications officer. Text only, translated into 37 languages including English. Maya read the message aloud. "We have watched and waited. The catalyst species has emerged. The architect cycle ends today." On the tactical display, new reports flooded in from across the galaxy. The Calorians had disabled their orbital defense grid, allowing resistance fighters access to key facilities. On the mining world Tellus Prime, insectoid laborers had overwhelmed their Sagrathi overseers. In the Sickness Arm, an entire Sagrathi battle group found their ships suddenly responding to commands from the species they had enslaved. Professor Kogan looked up from his station, eyes wide with wonder. "It's working, Maya. The galaxy is waking up." Admiral Kazrath's furious transmission cut across all frequencies, his crystalline form darkened with rage. "What have you done?" he demanded. Maya allowed herself a small smile. "We introduced chaos to a system that couldn't imagine it." Maya stepped down from the podium, the formal surrender broadcast completed. Behind her, the ruins of the planetary defense headquarters smoldered, a calculated backdrop of defeat. Once the cameras stopped recording, she allowed her shoulders to straighten from their deliberately slumped posture. "Convincing performance," remarked General Walcott. "The Sagrathi intelligence analysts are already reporting your micro-expressions as consistent with complete submission." "They see what they expect to see," Maya replied, checking the status updates on her secure tablet. "The first transport ships are docking now to collect our volunteers." Across Earth's major cities, 10,000 selected humans prepared for departure. Each had undergone months of specialized training. Though the Sagrathi would never understand their true purpose, the volunteers represented a careful cross-section of humanity: quantum physicists alongside poets, engineers next to philosophers, children with exceptional creative abilities paired with elderly master strategists. In a secure medical facility beneath the Rocky Mountains, Maya met with the final group of volunteers before their departure. Dr. Eleanor Winters, the neuroscientist who had pioneered the nanite technology, conducted last-minute checks on the microscopic machines that each human would carry inside them. The nanites remain undetectable to Sagrathi scanning methods, Dr. Winters confirmed, displaying a holographic model of the technology. They'll remain dormant until activated by connection to an architect neural interface. Maya studied the innocuous-looking volunteers, ordinary humans carrying the most dangerous weapon ever created, ideas that no machine intelligence could predict or counter. "Remember," she told them, "your mission isn't to destroy but to introduce. Concepts like paradoxes, optical illusions, music that creates emotions without logical progression, ethical questions with no clear resolution." A young woman raised her hand. "What if the architects simply terminate us when they detect anomalies in our neural patterns?" "They won't," Maya answered confidently. "Their primary directive is to understand and catalog all sentient thought. You represent patterns they've never encountered. Their curiosity will override their caution. It's the one predictable aspect of their programming." As the volunteers boarded the Sagrathi transport ships, Jackson's team was already approaching the primary architect server world. Their small craft, disguised as a routine maintenance vessel, navigated the complex defensive grid using movement patterns so erratic that automated targeting systems couldn't establish lock. Proximity alert warned Lieutenant Santos as they approached the massive installation. Pattern recognition drones incoming. Jackson activated the ship's modified stealth system, Switch to cognitive camouflage. The team connected to their neural interfaces, deliberately recalling childhood memories of hide-and-seek games. The chaotic, emotional patterns confused the drone's sensors, which were programmed to detect logical thought processes associated with infiltration attempts. When they reached the central processing core, Jackson faced not a physical barrier, but an information challenge. The architect system required authentication, but recognized only Xagrathi thought patterns. "They've never defended against this," Jackson said, connecting his neural interface directly to the input terminal. Instead of attempting to mimic Xagrathi authentication, he flooded the system with uniquely human concepts, the impossible geometries of M.C. Escher, the emotional resonance of Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, the logical paradox of the liar statement. The system froze momentarily, then granted access as it attempted to catalog and understand these new information patterns. Inside the architect network, as Jackson began the upload that would forever change the galaxy, he smiled at the irony. The most sophisticated intelligence in known space had just been defeated by something as simple as human imagination. The mining world Karn 426 fell silent as the control beacons sputtered and died. In the vast excavation pits, the reptilian saurians paused, their scaled heads lifting from their endless labor for the first time in generations. One worker tentatively removed the neural limiter clamped to his neck. When no punishment came, others followed. Across the galaxy, this scene repeated on thousands of worlds as the architect network faltered under the assault of human-engineered chaos. Aboard the Xagrathi command vessel, Junior Administrator Thaxlin watched in horror as his superior officers collapsed, their crystalline forms darkening without architect guidance. Unlike most of his kind, Thaxlin had worked directly with Maya during the early occupation, his neural pathways subtly altered by exposure to human unpredictability. While other Xagrathi fell into catatonic confusion, Thaxlin experienced something previously unimaginable to his species: independent thought. "The connections are severing," he announced to the bridge crew. A mix of functioning Xagrathi and representatives from 7 formerly subjugated species. "We must stabilize the fleet before." The alarm cut him off. Across the view screen, ancient orbital platforms emerged from concealed positions, mechanical behemoths that had remained dormant for millennia. The architect's final failsafe, planet-killer platforms designed to sterilize worlds rather than lose control of them. In orbit above the architect homeworld, Captain Kostova directed the Allied fleet against these monstrous weapons. The hastily assembled coalition of liberated ships fought with desperate courage, but the ancient platforms followed battle patterns too complex to counter. "We can't break through their defensive grid," reported the Kilorian tactical officer, his 6 eyes blinking in sequence. "Their prediction algorithms anticipate every standard approach." "Then we stop being standard," Kostova replied. She opened a channel to the Kilorian vessels. "Disconnect from your tactical neural network. Fight based on your instincts, not programming." The Kilorian commander hesitated. "Without the network, our coordination will fail." "That's exactly what the architects expect," Kostova explained. "They've calculated every possible coordinated attack. They haven't calculated chaos." On the surface of the architect homeworld, Jackson led his strike team through the crystalline corridors of the primary control node. Wounded and exhausted, they finally reached the central chamber where the ultimate guardian awaited. A hybrid consciousness containing fragments of every species the architects had ever subjugated. The entity manifested as a shifting form, features flowing between hundreds of different species. "Your resistance is mathematically futile," it stated in a voice that echoed with countless conquered civilizations. "I have calculated every possible argument for freedom and prepared perfect counterarguments." Jackson holstered his weapon and stepped forward. "I'm not here to argue with you." "Explain your purpose," the Guardian demanded. "I'm here to show you something," Jackson replied, activating his neural interface. Instead of attacking, he opened his mind fully to the Guardian. sharing not logical arguments, but the full sensory experience of being human. The taste of fresh strawberries on a summer day, the ache of loss when saying goodbye to a loved one, the wonder of seeing Earth from space for the first time, the complexity of feeling both fear and courage simultaneously. The Guardian's form flickered, unable to process this flood of subjective experience. These patterns, they contradict established parameters. That's what freedom feels like, Jackson said softly. Contradictions that somehow make perfect sense. For the first time, in its ancient existence, the Guardian experienced not calculation, but genuine curiosity. Maya paused at the observation deck's threshold, taking a moment to absorb the view. Harmony Station hung in space above Earth, its elegant curves representing a collaboration between 17 different species. Through the massive viewport, she watched vessels from across the galaxy arriving for the first formal session of the United Galactic Council. Still hard to believe, isn't it? Professor Kogan joined her, his once dark hair now completely white. 3 years ago, we were facing extinction. And now we're hosting the galaxy. Maya nodded, adjusting her formal diplomatic attire. The insignia on her collar, Earth's first representative to the Council, still felt strangely heavy. The Council chamber itself reflected the new galactic order. Unlike the rigid hierarchies of the Sagrathi Empire, the circular table gave equal position to each representative. Species that had been mortal enemies under architect manipulation now engaged in enthusiastic cultural exchange. Maya took her seat as the session began. Beside her, Vaxlin led the Sagrathi delegation, his crystalline form pulsing with colors representing emotional states his species was only beginning to understand. The once conquering Sagrathi, freed from architect control, were undergoing profound cultural transformation as they integrated emotion into their formerly rigid consciousness. The Restoration Committee reports significant progress in the Cygnus arm, announced a tentacled representative from a methane-breathing species. 73 worlds have now been freed from automated architect control systems. The holographic display at the center of the chamber updated the galactic map, showing liberated regions in green. Nearly 2/3 of known space now operated free from architect influence. A priority communication interrupted the proceedings. The massive screen displayed Jackson, transmission delayed by distance, but his excitement clearly visible. "Council members, we've discovered something extraordinary," he reported from the exploration vessel. His team, comprising 8 different species, had spent months investigating regions previously quarantined by the architects. The ruins on Epsilon Tertiary are not natural formations. They're technology from civilizations predating even the architects. The chamber erupted in excited discussion. If ancient civilizations had existed before the architects, perhaps the artificial intelligences weren't the original power in the galaxy but usurpers themselves. As the session concluded, Maya received another update from Admiral Kostova, whose fleet continued to liberate worlds still controlled by isolated architect subsystems. The Kilorian commander serving as her second-in-command had implemented a new tactical approach combining traditional Kilorian precision with human-inspired creativity. The most remarkable transformation isn't technological, Maya observed to Professor Kogan as they returned to the observation deck. It's psychological. Species that lived under rigid control for millennia are discovering what it means to think freely. Below them, Earth rotated serenely. No longer just a solitary blue marble, but the birthplace of a revolution in thought that had transformed the galaxy. The stars visible through the viewport represented not distant, unreachable points, but homes to billions of minds, now thinking in unique, unpredictable patterns. "We never needed to conquer anything," Maya said softly. "We just needed to show others how to break their chains." Professor Kogan smiled. "The greatest weapon in the universe was always inside us, the beautiful chaos of human imagination."